This is Legal AF, and we've got a lot to discuss. The theme of this episode, things backfiring in Donald Trump's face. The best laid plans when it comes to Trump are actually the worst laid plans. And as we've predicted on Legal AF, they're all crumbling. And as they crumble, Donald Trump is in the rubble. Let's talk about Laura Loomer bringing a lawsuit against Bill Maher for defamation. It's kind of a theme, these very kind of soft-skinned MAGA people bringing defamation lawsuits. And Donald Trump wasn't technically a party in the lawsuit, but when this lawsuit backfired, Donald Trump became implicated in the lawsuit, and the federal judge made a lot of commentary about Donald Trump's dark past and why Bill Maher may have believed or not believed certain things in the event that what he was saying wasn't kind of comedy and parody. And so we'll get into that on this episode. Also, the cover-up of the child sex trafficking ring by the Trump DOJ, the cover-up of the Epstein files backfiring in the Trump regime's face after Pam Bondi ditched her deposition, even though she was subpoenaed. And now we learn that the Trump regime is working with Republicans on the Hill to try to pardon Ghislaine Maxwell and to shut down congressional hearings and instead replace them with roundtables. It's just bringing more attention back to the cover-up. We'll get into that. Talk about backfiring Donald Trump's collusive lawsuit, and I use the term collusive because that's the term that a federal judge used, where he sued essentially the taxpayers. Trump sued the IRS and Treasury Department for $10 billion, claiming that a data breach that occurred in 2019 or 2020 from a contractor of the IRS caused Donald Trump such grievous emotional distress and so much harm that taxpayers should now settle with Donald Trump when he sues the United States government. He filed the lawsuit back in January of 2026, and we should pay him $10 billion. Now, the Trump regime in this lawsuit that was filed by Donald Trump, they did a filing on behalf of Trump that said, we are now in settlement discussions. Judge, can you grant a 90-day extension so that the defendants, the government, the Treasury Department, and the IRS can work with us on negotiations, and that they don't have to actually file a motion to dismiss or do what litigants are supposed to do in the case? And the federal judge is like, if you're asking me as a federal judge to rubber stamp fraud and to rubber stamp what may be a collusive, perhaps even criminal arrangement, I ain't going to do it unless you explain to me what the hell this lawsuit is about. I am going to sua sponte, meaning on my own initiative, force you to come into court or someone to come onto court on your behalf and explain what the hell this lawsuit is really about. Also, on the theme of backfiring, the judge quoted Donald Trump aboard Air Force One and in an interview that Trump gave with NBC, where Trump's like, I guess I already won the lawsuit. Yeah, it's like a lawsuit against myself. I'm structuring the deal on both sides of it. And the judge said, that sounds like a collusive deal to me. No case in controversy. I don't have jurisdiction. We'll break it down on Legal AF. And again, talk about backfiring. Two other issues of massive backfiring as Donald Trump and the MAGA Republicans tried to do this mid-decade redistricting. Democrats prevailing in Virginia on the yes referendum there, changing the congressional delegation from a 6-5 in favor of Democrats to a 10-1 Democratic Congress members versus Republicans, picking up potentially 4 seats. Now, MAGA Republicans filed a lawsuit. They complained, this, how dare you do mid-decade redistricting? This is unfair. Y'all started it, and the Democrats are the ones who want to ban political gerrymandering, and you're the ones who support political gerrymandering, MAGA Republicans. Anyway, they picked a Trumpy judge who temporarily ruled in their favor. But this is going to the United States. This is going to the Virginia Supreme Court this week. We'll break down what we expect the Virginia Supreme Court to do there. And then Kash Patel filed a defamation lawsuit against The Atlantic and talk about backfiring, because what ended up surfacing this week is Kash Patel, as a lawyer, had to make certain disclosures to the State Bar Association when he was becoming a lawyer about, you guessed it, alcohol. And he had to explain why there were certain alcohol incidents in his past for his moral character application. Backfire, backfire, backfire. You know who's not backfiring? Michael Popok, who is here. He's not backfiring. He's here on Legal AF in the flesh. Michael Popok, the people have missed you. We've got a lot to discuss.
Bang, bang. Yeah, I mean, it's a great way to tie it all together, the golden thread that ties together all of our segments today. It's just a whole lot of losing by Donald Trump, who the American people in poll after poll, including on Fox News, sees as a loser. Nothing drives Donald Trump crazier than when he is associated with losing. And that's all he's doing now. He is the most undisciplined president we've ever had. His administration is the most undisciplined administration we've ever had. And we get leak after leak. Thank God for Legal AF. Thank God for leakiness. It gives Legal AF and Midas Touch a lot of content because we hear about this, and I will talk about it here, the secret meeting that wasn't so secret at the Waldorf Astoria in the District of Columbia, as political operatives for Donald Trump all got together and they spent the first few minutes being chastised about leaking, about how poorly they are expecting to do. This is the headline. This is the top line. The Republicans expect to lose at the midterms and lose big, including Donald Trump, and it is driving them up the wall. It's of their own making. They have no one to blame but themselves. The American people watch the failings and flailings of Trump related to Iran. Who fires, by the way, the Secretary of the Navy during a major naval blockade mission in Iran to try to fix the Strait of Hormuz and energy prices? Who does that? Pete Hegseth and Donald Trump, or at least Pete Hegseth, by reading Donald Trump's patting the guy on the back on the way out, Secretary Falan, you think that he was news to Trump that the naval secretary got fired. Then you've got the polling, right, that you and I have covered. Fox News polling showing that, he's lost the support of Republicans about his handling of the economy, where the support has been cut in half since last summer. While all of that is going on, the entire Iran backfire, how many times do you and I have to lead off a hot take with Donald Trump declared victory prematurely again this hour? Then he's so undisciplined that even when he holds a press conference where all he needed to do was talk about lowering drug prices. That's something that goes to affordability, may answer some of the questions people have. If he just made the press conference about lowering drug prices, I guess that would be the story. Instead, the story was about how he wandered off and talked about replacing the pavers out in front of the Oval Office, painting the bottom of the Lincoln Memorial using one of his pool contractors. I'm like, is he going to start talking about building a barbecue this summer? Because I'm about to leave. And the American people are watching this going, this guy is incompetent. He's losing. All the tariffs now are being repaid because they have to be repaid. And in addition to all this backfiring that you talked about, and the fact that their attempt to redistrict their way to victory backfired because the Democrats picked up the cause and are redistricting congressional seats better than they are. I don't know quite what's going to happen. We have a clip. I had an interview with the Virginia Attorney General Jay Jones. I'm not quite sure what's going to happen on Monday morning at the Virginia Supreme Court, but I'm feeling pretty good about that map and that advantage. And then we're going to have to watch as Donald Trump pushes his way through to try to get, Florida, last minute, redo your map. Louisiana, last map. Hurry up. We got August primaries. We got to redo maps. And so all of his efforts to try to win by stealing, owning what stealing what he could never own, as that great song says, is on full display. And then you see it in the courts. Loss after loss after loss in cases involving Trump or those around him about defamation. Or this is one of the dumbest groups of people I've ever seen in action. To be honest, I've followed the list for a long time. For Kash Patel to try to litigate his way out of being accused of being a public drunk, knowing or having, he should have known that he made disclosures, like you said, for the Florida bar, as I did, and that he now has opened the door for Freedom of Information Act request for the Senate, for the House Democratic leadership to demand a written alcoholism test to be taken and for him to appear. He's going to be back in front of that committee, one of those committees very, very soon now under oath about this stupid lawsuit, which is just shows you the people around Donald Trump magically believe that they have the same immunity from criminal prosecution or loss of law licenses or whatever that Donald Trump does. And they do not. And we're watching it over and over again. And the electorate, as you know, Ben, better than anybody, is fed up. They're ready to vote. And just, I'll leave it on this. In 30 major races involving the House that would turn the tide and give control of the House to one party or the other, let's call them the battleground seats, the Democrats are up in those 30 seats by 6 points on average. Okay, that's a shellacking. So House, they already see the House is gone. And now the Senate, which you and I were like, oh, wouldn't that be amazing if the Senate was in play? The Senate is in play. The 4 seats the Democrats need, I think we got them. I mean, if we vote, Alaska, Maine, Texas, Ohio, North Carolina with the Roy Cooper, the governor. If we get to 51, now we're talking about healing our great country again, a return to oversight and control out of a rogue presidency. And Trump knows it.
One of the things I teach my law students and undergrad students when I'm not doing Midas touch work and I'm a professor is a good lawyer thinks through not just the first level of consequences to the actions that you do in a litigation, but you need to think through kind of the 5th to even the 10th tier consequences and kind of gameplay it. Okay, if I do this, they do this, then I do this, then they do this, and then take various scenarios to understand what the actual consequences are other than just reacting. Sometimes you may feel emotional or you get angry and you want to just lash out, but ultimately that could have certain tiers of consequences that are actually very harmful to you. So like even if you take Kash Patel, for example, and let's just assume arguendo for the sake of argument that he was actually defamed, and don't even use the Atlantic story, just defamed in the most vicious way imaginable, and he was slandered and libeled, and it was the worst, right? You're the FBI director. You run the most powerful law enforcement agency in the world. You want to distract your time based on what some media company says about you from being in this most important position where you're now going to have to do a trial, sit for depositions, get requests for production of documents, get interrogatories asked your way. Even if, you could win the case, you should view your situation as kind of being in a position where you've won in life in a way. I mean, you've obtained an incredible position where you should be doing this because you're a public servant and you want to help people because you've reached a area in your career where you can say, you know what, I'm going to devote my time to be a part of this incredible American history, this tapestry that is American. I'm not suggesting that, the FBI is always great or is great a lot of them. I mean, there's criticisms that we should, of course, level that way, and law enforcement and just generally. But my point is even if you knew you would win, why would that even be a thing that you would want to pursue and waste your time with, your valuable and precious time? So there are obviously deeper consequences in a case like this that now opens up discovery, which we'll talk about. But I think it's important that we talk about just that concept. It's like, okay, we understand that the United States can invade Venezuela and take it over. Yes, we have a powerful military, the most powerful in the world. Biden, you don't think Biden could have taken over Venezuela, or George W. Bush or Obama or anyone could take over Venezuela? The issue is, what are the layers and the other tiers of consequences if you do that? Are you now sending a message to China? Everything's fair game. If you take Venezuela, we take Taiwan. Do you send a message to Russia. Okay, well then if you do that, how is that different than us going after our neighbors? You send that message that it is now the law of the strong and that international laws, don't apply. And you think about the layers of consequences, as Donald Trump says, nobody knew that Iran would shut down the Strait of Hormuz or would attack the Arab nation neighbors with the American military bases. There was an NBC report this morning also showing that the damage to American military bases, at least 11 bases, are far more extensive than the Trump regime ever let on. But that shouldn't surprise you. What are the layers of consequences when you consistently make contradictory statements during negotiations with Iran, and you say one thing one day, another thing the other day, and then you use negotiations as a tool to try to humiliate the Iranian people during negotiations where you're not in a war posture, and then they don't want to negotiate with you. And then you again lie and claim there are negotiations taking place. And every Friday you do Market Manipulation Friday. You lie about the meetings that are going to take place, where Iran doesn't even want to meet with you because even meeting with the United States is gross. And the U.S. will fabricate. That's the way we used to think about countries like Iran, that if we can't meet because we lend credibility to regimes that we believe didn't have credibility. Now, other countries view that we can't meet with you because even meeting with your people will be used for fabrications and lies. And that's where we are right now. So with that said, in that context, why don't we start, Popok, a little bit before the break, talking about Loomer, and then we're going to talk about these other situations where there's been a massive backfire, because Loomer sues Bill Maher over Bill Maher making a joke, although Loomer says it wasn't a joke, about Loomer having a relationship with Trump. Loomer says there is no relationship with Trump. This was the time period during the campaign where Loomer was always by Donald Trump's side, and there was lots of speculation. So Bill Maher on his comedy show made a joke. Loomer said, "You defame me." She filed a lawsuit against him. And Popok, what happens?
Yeah, that one was fascinating. And you have to put it in context. That's what the judge says. This is Judge Moody, who, side note, he was a George Bush appointed judge. He's senior status. His daughter, Ashley Moody, is the junior senator from Florida on the Republican MAGA side, appointed by Ron DeSantis, and is running for election against Alexander Vindman come the midterms. But Daddy has a job to do, and he's a federal judge. And he took a look at the context in which this rhetorical joke, and not to say defamation, there's a joke privilege, but there is a joke privilege. And if something is just a rhetorical flourish or a joke in the context of a comedian up on a stage during effectively a comedy show, talking and suggesting something, no one in their right mind or a reasonable person would take that to mean that it is a statement of true fact. The joke, which during that moment in time when he made the joke during his stand-up, during his monologue, every media organization, including Midas Touch, was speculating about what is going on with the relationship with Laura Loomer and Donald Trump. In fact, Jordy ran, I did it with a hot take. Jordy from Midas ran a whole video of many of the same things the judge referred to in his decision when, the I love you, I love you, I love you between Loomer and Donald Trump on stage, the hand holding during a cold moment, the come to my private suite, her, all the shout outs between the two of them. And it looked to be more than just, a right-wing social media influencer and a president. And, there were even speculation in the press at the time about where is Melania on the campaign trail? Why is Donald Trump going to all of these events with Laura Loomer? And Laura Loomer, for those that aren't following, is a right-wing, avowed Christian nationalist. She supports white Christian ideals. She has said really bad things about black and brown people that she's had to apologize for. She has been a 9/11 denier. Yet Donald Trump took her to a 9/11 memorial in New York. So there's a lot of speculation, like, why isn't Melania on the campaign trail? And why is this 32-year-old Laura Loomer on the campaign trail? Leading to his joke about who Donald Trump is effing. I mean, that's where the joke went. And so we think we know it's Laura Loomer. That was a joke. Okay. Loomer sues in the court in Florida for defamation. And the judge, this was like boom, boom, boom. It was like 2 days apart. One judge dismisses Kash Patel's defamation case against Frank Fuglitzi, who worked in the FBI, who suggested that Patel spent more time partying in nightclubs than he spent on the 7th floor of the Hoover building doing his job. Defamation case. Okay, that got dismissed that same week by a judge in Houston, Texas, a federal judge in Houston, Texas. Then you had Loomer. Loomer's case gets dismissed because it's a joke, literally, is kind of how the judge came down on it and said, even if it wasn't a joke, even if it was capable of being defamatory, you didn't prove actual malice. This always trips up everybody from Donald Trump to the rest. That's a term of art in defamation that says you have to say something that is, even if it's false, you have to know that it's false when you said it, or recklessly disregard whether it's true or false. He said she didn't even make any showing of actual malice, but she didn't show any damage. In fact, her income went up, not down, in 2024. And he said, you didn't give me one witness, one person that said they believed that you were sleeping with Donald Trump as a result of the joke. Now, this is the backfire component. He wrote 18 pages outlining questions about the marriage between Melania and Donald Trump, repeating the same speculation that the press made about whether Donald Trump is sleeping with Laura Loomer, pointing out the age difference, the hand-holding, the I love you, all writ large in the judge's 18 pages. He could have done it in a paragraph, but no. He went through the evidence, including sworn deposition testimony, to your earlier point, that had to be given by Laura Loomer as the plaintiff. Sit down under oath. You're not on a podcast anymore. Swear in the witness. Same thing for, of course, Bill Maher. Bill Maher's defense, as quoted by the judge, was, it was a joke. Literally, he says, I could have said, get a room with all of the clips, but, we went a different direction because we were always speculating about who Donald Trump was Zooming these days. And that was it. Case is dismissed. But it is, again, a blueprint for how federal judges are handling the attempts by Donald Trump and those around him to use defamation law to have a chilling impact on adversaries and or the media and or the press. Perfect set of cases to talk about, as we did with the Kash Patel case earlier, on the day of the hour of the White House Correspondents' Dinner, which Donald Trump apparently is going to use to bash the press. Now, the free press, the independent press, those that don't bend the knee, are not in the room. Okay, Midas is not there. Legal AF is not there. We're not there on it for a reason. The only ones that are left in the room are the corporate media that wouldn't dare challenge the Federal Communications Commissions and being controlled by Donald Trump, who still need transactions to be approved in the future, or Donald Trump's personal coterie or inner circle, the Ellison family, that now owns, get this, CBS and CNN as of a couple of days ago. So, of course, they're in there hosting tables with fat cats and Donald Trump. They got rid of the comedian, who normally roasts the president because we have such a thin-skinned snowflake of a president. He can't take any criticism, let alone a roast. So that's gone. So now it's going to be Donald Trump roasting, I guess, us. I mean, you and I get roasted all the time. Every time there's a slow news day on Fox News, it's like another legal AF or Midas clip got used today, and the like. But what we're talking about here is federal courts being the insulator, being the firewall to stop Donald Trump from using defamation law against his adversaries and those around him doing the same thing, and supporting the First Amendment and freedom of the press. Every time, this is how it works. This is the playbook, so we can follow it home. Donald Trump gets annoyed or pissed off about a Wall Street Journal editorial or a New York Times expose or a fill in the blank. Somebody said something that hurt his feelings. He then hires a lawyer in my hometown here in Coral Gables, Florida, named Alejandro Brito, who types up, polishes off all the other ones he's done, types up some sort of lawsuit, including the Internal Revenue Service lawsuit we're going to talk about next, and files it, doesn't have to put, just as practicing lawyers, let me just tell our audience, you don't have to put the amount of money you're seeking. I only occasionally when I wanted the headline. Generally, you just have to get over the jurisdictional amount of $75,000 in federal court. But everything is $5 million, $10 billion, $20 billion, $250 million, so that the press will run with it. You know, they know it's catnip for the press to go run on that. So they file that. And then when the case gets dismissed, or usually dismissed either on summary judgment or earlier on motion to dismiss, then they blame the judge. And that's it. They go home. They got what they wanted for that particular moment. But it is the takeaway, I think, for our audience is that Trump's tool bag of using the First Amendment, using defamation law to go against his adversaries, his rivals, his perceived enemies is not working. And we have federal judges to thank for that.
Absolutely. And Popok, every time I had the client usually push, can you put a number value in the complaint? You know, and if I've done it, the few times I've always regretted it, you know, and then I stopped doing it because yes, you get a good day press cycle, but the federal judges hate it because they know it's intended for the press and the judges hate it in general. And then if you don't meet that number, your client believes that that's always going to be the number. Oh, you said in the complaint that it was $100 million or it was $50 million or it was $25 million. So even where the clients have wanted that and you've walked through with the client and you think that there's a strategic advantage, I've always found in the long run it's actually a mistake and a trap to actually do that. Now, we have a lot to discuss on this episode. The theme is cases backfiring on Trump's face, and you'll see many more instances of that. A quick reminder, though, if you or anybody you know has been injured in a car accident, a trucking accident, if you've been injured based on the negligence of a third party or a company, if you know somebody who's been killed in an accident and their family may be looking for a lawyer, reach out to the Popok firm, call or text 877-POPOK-AF or visit thepopokfirm.com. They've got lawyers across the country who are available 24/7. The consultation is free. The Popok firm is representing a lot of listeners and viewers of Legal AF, so don't be shy. Reach out to the Popok firm now. And again, you can look in the description below for those numbers and the website once again. Also, make sure you subscribe to the Legal AF YouTube channel and the Legal AF Substack. Both are doing great. We need to keep on growing the Legal AF platform, and Legal AF, the winner of 3 major Webby Awards. Congratulations to Legal AF for winning those 3 major Webby Awards. Let's take our first quick break of the show. And by the way, you all made that possible. They were People's Choice Awards, meaning you all pushed it over the edge in a very competitive category. So thank you for that. Let's take our first quick break of the show.
My cat Chanel, she runs the house. I just pay the mortgage and scoop litter. So when I found something that fixes that worst part of having a cat, I paid attention. This podcast is sponsored by Boxy. Boxy is the last cat litter you'll switch to. And their Boxy Pro Deep Clean, it's the best cat litter money can buy. The Pro in Boxy Pro stands for probiotics, which Boxy puts right in the litter that gobble up odor-causing bacteria and keeps the box continuously odor-free. Yes, continuously, not for 10 days or 20 days, infinite days of continual odor-freeness. And your cat won't smell anything either, as in no fake scents, which gives him or her one less reason to avoid the box. I've used Boxy Pro Deep Clean recently, and I can actually vouch that this works. Our place smells better, scooping is easier, and Chanel took to it right away. Plus, with Boxy, you do not need to do full litter changes. You just scoop, top it off with fresh Boxy litter, and that's it. If you're tired of switching litters, looking for the one, get 30% off your Boxy order at boxycat.com/legalaf and use code legalaf. That's BOXIECAT.com/legalaf and make sure you use my code legalaf so they know I sent you. Let's talk about something no one wants to talk about. What happens when you die? Because unfortunately, it's going to happen to you, but you can be prepared with Trust and Will online estate planning. I'll be honest, I've definitely been one of those people who keeps putting this off, and I'm not alone. 43% of Americans say they just haven't gotten around to making a will yet. It's easy to delay, even when you know it matters, especially when it comes to things like naming a guardian for your kids. That's why Trust and Will really stood out to me. You can create an estate plan in as little as 30 minutes, and their online platform walks you through everything step by step. So if you've ever felt overwhelmed or didn't know where to start, this makes it simple. Plus, they offer optional one-on-one support from attorneys in your state, which is a huge help. And it's not just for people with a lot of assets. Everyone has something to leave behind. Trust and Will believes estate planning should be accessible to everyone, so they are committed to making it affordable today and valuable tomorrow. Don't wait until it's too late. Protect your loved ones today, tomorrow, and beyond with Trust and Will, the most trusted name in online estate planning. Go to trustandwill.com/legalaf and get 20% off. That's trustandwill.com/legalaf to get your 20% off. trustandwill.com/legalaf.
Welcome back to Legal AF. Thank you to all of our sponsors. You see, Popok, when it comes to the best laid plans, they usually have to be plans. When it comes to Donald Trump, it's usually like the best laid dumps, like he just spews something out in the moment. He thinks it's a good idea. It comes from the malignant narcissism and the anger and the rage and the retribution, and let's just do it. We'll figure it out later. And what he has been able to do is bend reality to this fictitious dystopian world that he's created. But where that really has hit the wall is in courts, always, because it has standards. That's why I like the law, the elegance of it, right? It has rules of evidence, right? It creates a system of structure where you can't just have a fire hose of lies and disinformation. And it's why Trump hates the judiciary so much, because when judges do their job, Donald Trump can't get away with it. Outside of it, where he can abuse and use the media, and he can spread the propaganda, and he can, just relentlessly attack and harass people to try to break them. That doesn't work in a courtroom, especially where there's a litigant on the other side who stands up to you. So what happens though when you don't have a litigant on the other side that stands up to you? That's kind of the iteration of Trump's fascism and authoritarianism and the little baby that he is, that he doesn't want there to be an adversary on the other side. In his view, well, now that I am this authoritarian dictator, now I could finally win lawsuits, because he's always a loser and loses them. If I basically just sue the government, then I'll have the taxpayers pay me whatever money that I want, and I'll have federal judges just basically rubber stamp it, so I could finally say that I won lawsuits. I mean, it's right out of like the cartoonish villains that I grew up with. I've got a plan, and now I'm going to sue my own government, and I'm going to make them pay, and the taxpayers are going to pay for it. It's that level of like idiocracy, but it's real and it's happening. And so he sued the Treasury Department and the IRS in late January for $10 billion. He alleges that he was part of an IRS data breach that affected about 7,000 plus other high net worth people. You may recall at that time period, there was a lot of big stories in ProPublica and elsewhere about how really rich people don't pay taxes. Well, they got that information from this data breach that this IRS contractor with the last name Little John, he worked in the IRS, and apparently he's been sentenced, I think in 2024, to 4 or 5 years in prison. But like, he went to become a contractor at the IRS. And specifically, I think with the purpose of like finding Trump's tax returns and other rich people's tax returns in order to expose rich people not paying taxes. That became an issue at his sentencing. So about 7,600, 10,000 other people, somewhere between that number, were impacted by this data breach. They didn't sue. And remind you, this took place in 2019 to 2020. Who was in office then? Yeah, Donald Trump, Trump's IRS. The data breach was under Trump's 2019, 2020 IRS. So 2026, likely far outside the statute of limitations, I may add. Donald Trump files a lawsuit against the IRS and Treasury Department. IRS is inside the Treasury Department. Treasury Department is led by Scott Bessent, arrogant Scott Bessent, who's like, I don't believe that the Russians have made money when we remove sanctions. Not at all. That's not what happened. I mean, clearly they did. But, he's a Trump bootlicker, Trump sycophant. And so Donald Trump's idea is, let me do this case against Bessent. Bessent will pay me $10 billion, the taxpayer money. It's our money. And then Trump's like, yeah, I don't know what I'll do with it. I'll decide. Maybe I'll give it to charity, in which case he's probably thinking in his own mind, he's going to use it as a $10 billion deduction against all of the other shady income that he's been getting through these quid pro quo deals. So he files the lawsuit. In a lawsuit, what normally happens is you file a lawsuit and it's an adversarial process. The other side then goes, oh man, I've been sued. That makes me angry. I don't want to be sued. And then they fight back, right? That's a case in controversy. Under Article 3 of the Constitution, there needs to be real cases. You can't just have me and Popok basically say, hey, Popok, hey, Ben, you want to see if the court thinks that we should take, if you should pay for Disney on Ice when we take our daughters together? Yeah, let's see if the court does it. Hey, judge, me and Popok are best friends. Who should foot the bill? That's not what courts do. I mean, I'm giving an exaggerated example. Courts deal with real life controversies, not like things like that. And otherwise, there's no jurisdiction to have the case. And so the Treasury Department and IRS, they don't respond to the lawsuit as you would expect a litigant. Instead, the plaintiff, Donald Trump, says, I'm in productive discussions with the defendant, and we're thinking about settling the case. So can we have 90 days, Judge, so that they don't have to actually respond to the lawsuit and we can work out a settlement? And they're not going to object to the request for 90 days. Popok, take the story away from there of what happens next.
Happy to. And I know some of the players. I know Kathleen Williams well, a very respected judge down where I practice, the Southern District of Florida. We have a lot in common. She went to Duke. Our birthdays are 2 days apart, and she had an illustrious career as the federal public defender in Miami and also in Orlando for a number of years, and has tussled with the Trump administration and MAGA before. She's the judge that ruled against Alligator Alcatraz, finding that building a detention center in the middle of the Florida Everglades, a protected site, was a violation of environmental law. She's taken on DeSantis and his attorney general, James Utmeyer, finding him in contempt because they tried to pass a law that she found invalid, making illegal migrants having that violate Florida law, not federal law. So she's no stranger to the Trump administration. She is a firebrand. She is independent. And but this is where, and I checked the civil cover sheet, this is where Trump wanted the case. He wanted the case not in the West Palm Beach division, to put it near Judge Cannon. Just a little tutorial for those that are tuning in. The Southern District of Florida runs from Fort Pierce through Key West. There's stops along the way with different courthouses: Fort Pierce, West Palm Beach, Fort Lauderdale, Miami, Key West. And the U.S. attorney and the public defender cover that entire stretch, all up and down the coast. If you practice down here, you got to go like 70 miles in one direction and 70 miles in the other direction to cover the whole Southern District. And the federal judges are in those different courthouses. Williams happens to be in Miami, which is the largest of all of those courthouses. And so when you're a civil litigant and this got filed January 29th, 2026, as Trump and his kids, because I think Eric Trump and some Trump organization people were in there, entities were in there as well, versus the Internal Revenue Service that he owns and controls through his Treasury Secretary. And it was a complaint. It went on forever. And this is one of the things that galls me. For a president, no president in history has violated the Privacy Act against the American people more than Donald Trump. And yet, this snowflake is suing for his own violation of the Privacy Act because he didn't like the fact that his tax returns that he should have by tradition released to the American people in 2016 and in 2020 to let them evaluate who they were electing. He always said, well, I'm under audit, so I can't release the returns. That's not a thing. He just made that up. And so when this Chaz Littlejohn leaked it to ProPublica and New York Times, for instance, ran, I think it was a Pulitzer Prize winning report, having received the leaked information, detailing how Trump, and even going back to his father, have effectively never paid income tax on billions of dollars of income. I mean, very little, thousands of dollars, of income tax. But anything that happened with that Privacy Act violation, if that was a Privacy Act violation, was already sort of mitigated by the fact that the House Oversight Committee, a year or two later, got his tax returns and released them to the American public. How many hot takes and videos did you and I do about the tax returns? So that's out there already. This is like Donald Trump suing over the Epstein birthday book. Oh, the Wall Street Journal ran an article and said that I'm on page 253 of volume 2 of the leather-bound birthday book for Jeffrey Epstein. All right, great. Who doesn't have a copy of the birthday book at this point? Midas put it up on your Substack. I put it up on Legal AF Substack. The whole thing's out there because the Judiciary Committee released it. So this already has the look of being, what are your damages? But we knew that didn't matter. But in order for Donald Trump to have a claim under the Federal Tort Claims Act against the government, he had to show that he has a real case in controversy, right? And that there's an exchange of consideration. In the law, if I say to you, you've harmed me, I am going to sue you, and this is my legitimate case, unless you settle with me now or after I file the case. Okay, if you and I enter into a settlement agreement and we exchange consideration, I won't sue you, or I'll withdraw my suit in return for a pile of cash. Okay, that is an exchange of consideration that the law recognizes. If I say to you, I don't have anything of value, I just want you to give me money, that's a robbery. That's a robbery. For Donald Trump to go knock on the door of the IRS and say, hi, Donald Trump president, please, $10 billion, please. That's not in settlement of a case if there's no case and no real controversy. That is a theft. That is embezzlement in plain sight. Okay. So Donald Trump, to try to cover up for that, decided to manufacture a lawsuit that he filed in January 2026, which he alleged a privacy violation. At best, this is a rogue employee that did not have the permission of the IRS to do it. It would be very hard for him to hold the IRS responsible for it. Maybe he could, ultimately, if he can even sue his own government. So that's where Judge Williams said, I was waiting for the parties to file some sort of opposition papers to each other, but I haven't. Now, why did the IRS not file and answer a motion to dismiss? And the only piece of paper that's gotten filed effectively since January 2026 is the complaint. Why is a motion to extend time to let the parties have a discussion about settlement? Why? Well, there is reporting, including with the New York Times, that there is a struggle going on in the Department of Justice, even the one controlled by Donald Trump, about how do we get out from under this ethical conflict of being on the other side of Donald Trump while still president about about this dispute? How do we put any Department of Justice lawyer in there at all? So while that struggle was going on, and again, another leak from this very undisciplined administration, the fact that you and I can talk about that kind of reporting, while that was going on, they came up with the wallpaper idea. Let's just ask for more time, which the judge, who obviously reads the New York Times and has her own thought process, said, wait a minute. Okay. You got to have adversary parties on either side of the V, right? And I'm not, and fundamentally, a bedrock principle, she wrote, of a live case or controversy to give me Article 3 under the Constitution's power, jurisdiction, is there's got to be adversariness. That's what it sounds like. Got to have adversaries. Like you said, it can't just be you and me sharing a popcorn later today at Disney on Ice. That sounds fun, by the way. That's not going to do it. It's got to be, F you stole my seat. And then something happens. And then we have adversarial relationship. Without adversariness, there is no jurisdiction for a federal court. There's no lawsuit. And if there's no lawsuit, then there's no consideration for an exchange related to the settlement. And if there's no exchange of consideration, then Donald Trump is just stealing billions of dollars from the Treasury, which would lead to public interest groups and others withstanding going back to federal court to stop him from raiding the Treasury and the Internal Revenue Service. And this all gets set up with a 4-page ruling by or a order by Judge Williams, which we posted up on Legal AF Substack, that says, you know what I want? I want the parties in May to brief this issue. And I also thought she trolled Ben, the Trump administration, a little bit, because she said that by May 20th, the parties shall each file a memorandum of law each. I don't want to see one, right? Unless you want to just concede there's no adversariness. Better be 2 briefs about why you think the president of the United States can sue his own agency while he's president. Because there's been discussions, according to the leaks, that maybe we should just wait till 2029 when he's not president any longer. But in 2029, it's a whole different Department of Justice and government. The other fundamental question is, even if she finds somehow adversariness, does she take the Department of Justice and the lawyers for the government out and appoint an independent counsel? There's something you never associate with this administration, an independent lawyer that doesn't work for Donald Trump, and have that person be kind of on the adversarial side to guide the judge as an officer of the court. If she doesn't like, Ben, the way those memos look for the IRS, she's called their bluff. She has the power, as has happened before with this administration, to appoint an independent counsel to give her advice on this. And where all this stems from is, you and I covered it, but now it's starting to rear its ugly head, is an executive order that Donald Trump issued back at the beginning of the administration when Pam Bondi was still the Attorney General, that directed everybody in the government, including the Department of Justice, had to follow the interpretation of law set by the president, period. That was the capture of the Department of Justice and destroyed its independence, because it would be the law is whatever Trump says it is. But how do you do that? There goes adversariness about interpretation, because they got to follow the law of the guy that they're allegedly they're in this fictitious lawsuit with. This is fascinating. I want to see, as you do, what happens on May 20th, what happens with an oral argument on May 27th. If I'm in town, I may try to pop in and see it for myself. But this is the unraveling, right? This is like she pulled the thread, and this could be a major unraveling of his attempts to steal billions of taxpayer dollars from the U.S. Treasury.
Yeah, and the judge doesn't want to be implicated. It's what we've talked about before, is in many ways, whether it's the cover-up of the child sex trafficking ring and the Epstein files, this or the other, Trump wants to almost implicate the judges in his schemes to give it the stamp of approval. And here we see a judge saying, not today. It's not going to happen. So I think the judge ultimately does, one of 2 things. And maybe the judge even presents it as an option, which is the case needs to be dismissed right now for lack of adversity or lack of adverseness. And it could be refiled in the future if there is that. And maybe there could be some sort of tolling agreement or arrangement that you can bring it later. Or I think the court basically says, look, the court can stay on the docket, but I'm going to stay the case until there is actual adversity when there's a new administration in power, and then they can deal with it. But I'm not going to, based on this dynamic and based more significantly on Trump's own words, right? What the other footnote was, there was 2 footnotes in this 4-page elegant order. One footnote mentioned the executive order that you talked about, where she said, look, Trump, your own executive order says you're the final decision maker and that the agencies don't have independence. So you now are the one who makes the decision based on your own executive order. But number 2, there were at least 2 instances where you're on record publicly as saying you're settling with yourself and that you've already won the case before it began because you're settling with yourself. So when they come in late May and both sides present their argument, whatever's going to happen, if they even do that, the judge is going to grill them on, well, what about Donald Trump's statement saying this? Do you think that's an appropriate statement? And then we're going to see the lawyers from both sides going, What level of coordination does Trump have? How has this been communicated to you? Who at the DOJ knows about this? Have you spoken to Todd Blanche? What could be interesting also is that there are these congressional hearings with Bessent and Blanche and other people, and they've been asked about this lawsuit, and they've denied having like any knowledge about it, or we don't know, or we'll go through the normal process and channels. So have they been lying under oath about what's been happening? So this puts the Trump regime in the bind that it should be in, but it's there because they're doing things that are improper, unlawful, criminal, despicable, in my opinion. You could have your opinion too. All right, let's take our last quick break of the show. A reminder, make sure subscribe to our YouTube channel, but more importantly, subscribe to the Legal AF YouTube channel and the Legal AF Substack, wherever you wherever, just go search Legal AF on YouTube, and on Substack, search Legal AF, subscribe there. Also, if you or someone you know have been injured in a car accident, a trucking accident, if you've been injured by the negligence of a company or the negligence of some third party, if you know somebody who was injured in an accident, or maybe you know someone who was tragically killed based on the negligence of a company or someone else, and their family's looking for a lawyer, why don't you reach out to the Popok Law Firm, 877 Popok AF, or visit thepopokfirm.com. They're available 24/7. And if you want to just double check, we have all that information in the description below as well. All right, let's take our last quick break of the show. We will be back with more.
You've got weight loss goals, but hitting them, that's another story. Enter Weight Loss by Hims. It's designed to support you in losing the weight and keeping it off. And Hims now offers access to an affordable range of FDA-approved GLP-1 medications, including the Wegovy pill and the Wegovy pen. With Wegovy at Hims, lose up to 20% or more of your body weight when combined with diet and exercise. Plus, Wegovy is the first ever GLP-1 pill for weight loss, so there are no needles needed. Through Hims, everything happens online. You'll connect with a licensed provider who will determine if treatment is right for you. If prescribed, your medication is delivered right to your door. No insurance necessary. And it doesn't stop there. Hims makes hitting your goals seamless by offering access to 24/7 messaging with your care team and in-app lifestyle and nutrition support like recipes, meal plans, fitness videos, sleep content, and more. Are you ready to reach your goals? Visit hims.com/legalaf to get a personalized, affordable plan that gets you. That's HIMS.com/legalaf. Hims.com/legalaf. Weight Loss by Hims is not available in all 50 states. Wegovy is the registered trademark of Novo Nordisk AS. To get started and learn more, including important safety information, Wegovy clinical study information, and restrictions, visit hims.com. Starting something new isn't just hard, it's terrifying. I remember when I first started the podcast and the YouTube channel, I kept thinking, what if no one watches or listens? What if I fail? What if I make a fool of myself? What if this just doesn't work? But pushing through that doubt ended up being one of the best decisions I've ever made. And honestly, it's a lot easier when you have the right support behind you. It also helps when you have a partner like Shopify on your side. Shopify is the commerce platform behind millions of businesses around the world and 10% of all e-commerce in the U.S., from household names to brands just getting started. With hundreds of ready-to-use templates, Shopify helps you build a beautiful online store that actually matches your brand's style. And Shopify is packed with helpful AI tools that write product descriptions, page headlines, and even enhance your product photography so you can spend less time stressing and more time growing your business. Plus, Shopify helps you get the word out with built-in email and social media campaigns so you can reach customers wherever they are. It's time to turn those what ifs into with Shopify today. Sign up for your $1 per month trial today at shopify.com/legalaf. Go to shopify.com/legalaf. That's shopify.com/legalaf.
Welcome back to Legal AF. Thank you to all of our incredible sponsors. Discount codes in the description below. They help support the show. Help support the show by supporting our sponsors, and great stuff as well from our sponsors. Jordy and Popok work hard to get you those discount codes. And so use the discount codes in the description below. Shout out to all of them. Popok, rapid fire on this third segment. I want to focus on three topics in particular. I want to talk about Jerome Powell and what the Trump regime now is saying that they're going to be, I guess, not criminally investigating Powell for now, they said, because Senator Tillis, a Republican from North Carolina, said he would not support Kevin Warsh, the Fed chair nominee who was partying with Epstein and may have had financial entanglements, as well as we saw during his hearing that he refused to talk about what the financial entanglements with a fund that may have had Epstein money commingled in the same fund. But he said, "Don't worry, the ethics department cleared me. I'm good, everybody." Okay, there, Kevin Warsh. So we've got Jerome Powell. I want to talk about Kash Patel's lawsuit backfiring, and then Virginia redistricting and what we expect to happen in the Supreme Court. Why don't we start with Jerome Powell?
Yeah, great. Let's do rapid fire. I agree with you. So Jay Powell is not going anywhere. That's the top line. That's the headline. His term as chair of the Federal Reserve is up on the 15th of May, but his term as a board of governor is until 2028. And that's been driving Donald Trump mad because he wants control of the Federal Reserve, 7 members. If he gets 4 out of the 7, he can control not only that, but the Federal Open Markets Committee, which sets interest rates. So you get the Fed Board of Governors, you ultimately get the Open Markets Committee, and then you can lower interest rates to your heart's desire, regardless of what it does to wreck the economy, the deficit, the debt, pricing, inflation, and the rest, because you don't care, because you're on your way out. What we've been watching is an elaborate going out of business sale by Donald Trump. It's just he's doing as much maximum damage as he can possibly do and line his pockets as quickly as possible on the way out. That's his goal with Jay Powell. It started with Lisa Cook. He couldn't get her off with some manufactured allegations of a mortgage fraud. So when that got blocked, and we're waiting on the Supreme Court to rule, but they're not going to let him fire her. So he turned to Jay Powell under an allegation that there's been cost overruns about 2 major federal buildings that make up the Federal Reserve campus that haven't been remodeled in 100 years. Meaning, if you want to check by math, go to the Federal Reserve, go to their frequently asked questions and their videos about the remodeling. It's very transparent about changing out 100-year-old electrical, plumbing, heating, air conditioning, asbestos mitigation, elevators. You can see how these things could the cost could escalate, right? And so it's doubled in cost. Many things have doubled in cost, especially since COVID, when Donald Trump was president, especially things that deal with building supplies and logistics. Donald Trump's own ballroom doubled in price. There's the Department of Homeland Security has been working on a building for 10 years. It's doubled in price. It's not even done. So Donald Trump, I'm going to redone the whole, I'll put a coat of paint on it. I'll just get my pool contractor from Mar-a-Lago. We'll put a new coat of paint, $25 million, call it a day. Yeah, no. It's billions of dollars of work for these 2 buildings. And Donald Trump decided to use that as an excuse to suggest that Jay Powell is lining his pockets with kickbacks from the build. Right. Has anybody seen this guy? Does anybody think he's stealing from the Federal Reserve and he's getting kickbacks from contractors and vendors? No. But, and all that did was make Jay Powell more committed to the independence of the Federal Reserve and not letting Donald Trump take control of it. The more he bashed Jay Powell to try to get him to quit, either by embarrassing him or starting a criminal case against him, the more Jay Powell literally was committed to staying in that chair. See, past tradition, a Federal Reserve chair whose term was longer than his chairmanship would give up the term as well and let the sitting president name a replacement. He was never going to do that with Donald Trump threatening to destroy the independence of the Federal Reserve. So Kevin Warsh has been blocked effectively in the Senate Banking Committee because Tom Tillis, a Republican, somebody who Trump forgot was still in the Senate, has declared that unless the criminal case started by Jeanine Pirro against Jay Powell and the Federal Reserve for this BS made-up criminal case about the construction cost overruns, unless that's lifted, he's not going to vote for Kevin Warsh. He basically apologized to him at the confirmation hearing. Seemed like a nice guy. I would vote for you. I have no questions for you. I'm not voting for you. Fast forward a day or two after the confirmation hearings, Trump, I guess, is trying to satisfy the requirement, the line in the sand by Tom Tillis, and had Jeanine Pirro announce in social media that there's an inspector general that's on the case and will report back to me on the facts. But in the meantime, I'm going to close the criminal case, but I may reopen the criminal case if it turns out I need to. And then how's that, Tom Tillis? Not great. You know, I joked during one of my hot takes. It's like Schrodinger's cat. It's a criminal case that's both open and not open. It's closed and not closed. Which is it? So as of right now, we haven't heard from Tillis's office about whether this announcement satisfied him. I don't think it has, but certainly there's got to be back channel phone calls, or there should be, between the White House and Tillis about, is this good enough? And if it's not, what do we need to do? The ironic thing is Trump didn't have to do anything. He just needed to take a knee. He just needed to take the loss when Judge Boasberg, the federal chief judge in D.C., basically closed the criminal case by saying it was brought in bad faith and dismissed the subpoenas issued by the grand jury. No, they had to continue to act like it was still a live criminal case. So this is now going to turn to Tillis, and this is going to turn to whether he's now going to side with Trump and confirm Warsh. If he doesn't, by the 15th of May, Jay Powell just stays in as the Federal Reserve chair. And he'll stay in his seat through 2028, and Donald Trump will not be able to capture the Federal Reserve at all at any time, even if Warsh gets on. And last note, even if Warsh gets on, he doesn't have 6 other votes to change interest rates. You need 7 votes on the on the Federal Open Markets Committee of 12. He has 1. If you add the 2 other Republicans or people that side with the Republicans, he's got 2 others. He's got 3. He's got to get 4 more. You know, there's no superpower of the Federal Reserve chair. He has to work by way of consensus. So that's that. Patel, you and I talked about at length at the top of the show. Kash Patel has now opened up a can of worms, and I'm sure he wished he hadn't. I joked on a hot take, I've never seen a drowning man throw himself an anvil or a anchor. And that's exactly what he did. Only an idiot would try to sue his way, open himself up to discovery and depositions and sworn statements under oath, document review and document discovery and subpoenas. It's not hard to get the Poodle Room in Vegas to subpoena their camera and their credit card data about whether he drank at the Poodle Room or Ned's Bar in New York or all the other places that the Atlantic magazine reported on. And now the Democrats are taking this, like, who never liked Kash Patel. I mean, who can forget Cory Booker, the senator, saying, I don't think you're going to be here at the next Oversight Committee hearing because you are the most incompetent, corrupt FBI director ever. And so from there, you have Jamie Raskin leading a group of House Judiciary Committee members who have demanded that he take I almost said a sobriety test, a written, are you an alcoholic test, and submit it under oath to the committee, and then they want to hear from him. And now people are going back to the Florida bar, different places where he's a member of the bar, to try to get his application for when he applied about whether he had a drinking problem. You can't stand in front of the American people, especially with the videos running behind you of chugging beers at the hockey game for the Americans during the Olympics and other places where you always seem to have a drink in your hand, and then suggest that I am sober. And haven't you seen me during the Senate and House? Yes. And that doesn't suggest that you're sober, especially when he stood before the press recently and couldn't remember key features of his own complaint that was filed about allegations. Not a good look. If he thought this was going to be cover for him to stay in office longer, I don't think so. A very uncomfortable Todd Blanche was standing next to him during the press conference. And if I'm reading the body language, I'm not sure Kash Patel makes it to the next oversight committee hearing. And then you've got finally the in Virginia, and we're going to be covering it on Monday at 9 a.m. at the Virginia Supreme Court in Richmond, Virginia. We've got this, and it's no pressure on Virginia, but it's a big case, okay? Virginia put on a referendum that led to an election, a vote on Tuesday. 3 million people voted in Virginia. And by 4 points, it'll end up being about 4 points, the voters of Virginia voted to allow their House of Delegates, their state house, to redo the maps 10-1 in favor of the Democrats to balance out what's going on around the country. So their vote is not diluted, not just by what happens in Virginia, but what happens in Missouri and in Texas. And so they voted for that. A very clear referendum. I've read it a number of times. It's not hard. I've dealt with ballot initiatives and challenges to the language of ballot initiatives. This one was fine. A judge in the reddest part of Virginia, Tazewell County, had blocked it originally when it was a referendum. The Virginia Supreme Court said, no, let's see what the voters do. Come back to us after. Well, the voters voted. And now Trump and the Republican National Committee want to disenfranchise and stop the certification of an election. Does that sound familiar? And so now the case has been revived and brought back before the Supreme Court of Virginia. And this question is whether there's some procedural issues about whether the House of Delegates referendum, the language matches the resolution and all sorts of other things. But what it comes down to in plain English is whether the votes of 3 million Virginians are going to be respected. They came out. There was $100 million spent. Barack Obama, did a lot of campaigning with Governor Spanberger, and the yes vote won. Redo the maps. Not only that, let me bring in, I have a clip from my interview with Virginia Attorney General Jay Jones, who helped lead the effort here in his office. Will be arguing it. He and I talked about this, and this is true. When Spanberger, she won by 15 points as governor. She ran effectively. One of her campaign platform planks was to redo the maps in Virginia. So people knew when they voted for her that one of her first tasks in the state house was going to be lead the charge to redo Virginia maps and make them more democratic leaning. So, and she won by 15 points. That's a landslide, by the way, that Donald Trump's always claiming that he obtained. So Monday, Legal AF it's a fast moving story, be keeping a close eye on it. Florida, they're talking about spreading their Republicans really thin to try to redo it again and try to crank out 2 or 3 more. But if Virginia holds and no other state moves forward in this very short period before primary season, it'll be almost even playing field, net zero, in terms of Republican versus Democratic seats going into the midterms. But one last thing, just to keep our audience's eye on it. We're waiting impatiently for the United States Supreme Court to make a ruling in a Voting Rights Act case called Calais out of Louisiana. If that one turns over the apple cart, which we expect about the Voting Rights Act, watch a number of red states, even at the last minute, even in June, for an August primary to try to redo maps, but with litigation that we'll have to follow, trying to block it. It is a fight to the death for whether this is going to be an even playing field come the election, or the Republicans are going to steal an unfair advantage.
One other point I'll make as well, just to round out this episode, the backfiring of the cover-up of the Epstein files. We know about 2 weeks ago, Bondi was supposed to testify before the House Oversight Committee. She refused to show up, saying she's no longer the AG. Therefore, I no longer need to respond to subpoenas. This ain't the same Democratic House Oversight Committee anymore. Like, it's led by Congressmember Garcia, who's very aggressive. He's not letting Bondi off the hook. Now what the MAGA Republicans are trying to do is Democrats led by Garcia are calling them out. Republicans like, we're done with hearings for the rest of the term. We're just going to do no more hearings through the midterm. We'll do roundtables. And how about that? And then Democrats are like, no, we're not doing roundtables. What are you talking about? We're doing hearings under oath and depositions. And then as a result of the Democrats fighting back on the House Oversight Committee led by Garcia, not just Democrats, people across the country, this is a bipartisan issue. It's not like a Democratic issue, but it's like, release the damn Epstein files, stop covering up child sex trafficking rings. Comer's now being pressed over and over again. What are you doing now? What are you doing now? What's going on with the Epstein files? What's going on with this and that? And then Comer admits not only are they doing these roundtable things, they don't want to do hearings. He says that a lot of people on the committee are thinking about helping Trump get a pardon for Ghislaine Maxwell. Comer said that on the record to Politico, of all places. And then Comer's like, oh, I didn't mean me. I meant other people. And then all the Democrats are like, none of us. So who are all of these people who are Republicans, obviously, who are working with Trump to get Ghislaine pardon? I mean, Comer made this comment on the record. And then Comer's like, stop with the clickbait. Stop with the clickbait. You said it. Those were your words, that there were lots of people that in the committee who were trying to help her get a pardon. So you put all of that together, and the American people right now are just livid and they want accountability. And again, this isn't, I don't think it's a Democratic issue, Republican issue, independent issue. These issues should be kind of universal issues, getting at the truth, getting at the facts, presenting credible evidence, and allowing people to use credible evidence to form opinions, not lead with opinions, form opinions after being presented with the facts. That's what we do here on Legal AF. We give you the facts, the evidence, the receipts, then form your own opinions. Whether you agree with me or Popok or not, you'll be fully informed to draw those opinions and make those opinions on your own.
Let me ask you before you leave on Epstein, what happened to the call by Melania for hearings where victims can testify and seek dignity and justice? Where are those?
Exactly. Well, that's the 1-2 step, right? She says that. What happens right after? Paolo Zampoli, who's the person she says introduced her to Donald Trump. Zampoli's now embroiled in this Rye 3, this Italian documentary on him that he tried to shut down, where he said, all Brazilian women, they're just telenovela liars. His girlfriend was Brazilian, and they had a custody dispute. It's alleged that he helped expedite her deportation, which he denies, to Brazil. She says that she's got all this dirt and information on him and the Trumps, and that she knows she's been with him for like 20 years. She was trafficked to the United States by Jean-Luc Brunel, one of Epstein's traffickers. Then she fell into this circle. She met Zampoli. Zampoli and Epstein were trying to buy modeling agencies together. Zampoli's all over the files. So in Melania's like, it wasn't Epstein who introduced me to Trump. It was Zampoli. Okay, got it. It was the guy who wanted to do modeling agencies with Epstein. That makes it much better, Melania. Okay, that's who introduced you at the Kit Kat Club. But so Zampoli's like, I want to testify to corroborate Melania that I'm the guy who introduced Melania to Donald Trump. And then the Democrats like, great. We would love, Zampoli's like the special envoy of like cultural events. He's got an ambassador position right now. And Democrats are like, bet we get Zampoli. Oh, great. We're going to ask him all of these questions about Melania's immigration status, all of the things about the Einstein visa. All of that's fair game. And then Republicans are like, yeah, we're going to do roundtables now. We're not going to do real hearings anymore. And by the way, Ghislaine, you want a pardon? Elaine, you want a pardon? In my own view, in my opinion, I don't lead with my opinions. I lead with objective facts, and then I give you an opinion. All of this is related, and draw your own conclusions, but I think it's all related. I want to thank everybody for watching this episode of Legal AF. If you or someone you know has been injured in an auto accident, car accident, trucking accident, if you've been injured by the negligence of a company or a third party, and you're looking for a lawyer, reach out to the Popok firm, 877-POPOK-AF, or go to thepopokfirm.com. They've got people across the country. Consultation is free. They'll see if you have a case or not. Even if you know someone who may have a case, tell them reach out to the Popok firm. More of that information is in the description below. Also, make sure you subscribe to the Legal AF Substack and Legal AF YouTube channel. Let's keep growing those channels and building the Legal AF community. Thank you so much, everybody, for watching. We appreciate you. We're grateful for you. Subscribe to the Midas Touch YouTube channel. Get us 7 million subscribers. Get Legal AF 2 million subscribers on that YouTube channel. Great to have Popok back. See you next time on Legal AF.